And trust me, I didn't like hearing this when I received this first download when I was sitting with ayahuasca in the Sacred Valley of Peru. And, single, went through a really traumatic divorce on this journey of self healing and then opening my heart to love and writing down the lists and who am I calling in and his energy and what he stands for and how I feel in his presence and, all the things I'm getting super specific about it and manifesting with it and sex magicking and full moon and new moon and half moon and every moon. And the medicine told me something really interesting. This guy that you're looking for who he's 6'3" and you have mutual friends but you haven't met him yet, and he's on a spiritual journey but he's not a spiritual guy, and he is open-hearted but only to you, and knows tantra but like only monogamous, and like all these things. What you're looking for, this man who will always choose you no matter what and always be certain of his path and of you, but accept you even at your ugliest and your most confused self. He loves all those parts of you, but he's always stoic and steady and never changes, and you're forever rock who's equal parts creative and masculine and this and that. What you're looking for, baby girl, is God. You are looking for God that you have placed in the form of a man and can be all of the things that you need at any moment of time, especially as you continue to shift and evolve and, explore different dimensions and aspects of yourself, to expect this man who, maybe it's like, what I realize is we've all been told this thing in the divine feminine space. And it's kind of this like pendulum of, our parents and the way that they grew up was like, you get married, you don't question it. You just accept your husband, even if the relationship doesn't meet you in any way. We grew up seeing that. We're like, I definitely don't want that. But then we've swung the pendulum in this opposite direction where we need to feel romantic and safe and chosen and inspired and financially balanced and like all of these things at all times with the rate that we're changing, and expect that person to be changing the same direction as us. It's a really tall order. And what it showed me, especially in this divine feminine space, is this notion that if you just improve yourself enough, right? You just do enough healing work and shadow work and past life regression and this and that, then this man will like descend from the Himalaya mountains and he's like, oh, you've reached the vibration that you can now find me, And while I believe it is a helpful thought, it's that dangling carrot that maybe some of us need to do this deeper healing work of my reward on the other end will be this conscious masculine Jason Momoa kind of man. It's seeing men as a reward rather than as a human. And it's perpetuating this really self-absorbed notion of relationships that we're in today. That relationships are just here to serve me and my needs and make me feel like this, and casting a role, right? I'm casting the role for Aquaman in my life. I'm casting the role for, David Data, but with sexier muscles in my life, like, all these things, rather than seeing the person. A man is a human. And I was like, well, what if, I really want a relationship that's forever? It's like, are you willing to stand the years that relationship may experience uncertainty, may experience, natural retractions? There may be times that you're not sure. There may be times that he's not sure. Are you willing to stand through, those turbulences? Or are we perpetually waiting for someone to hit all of our needs at any given time? And if it's not hitting our needs, then you must not be the one. There must be someone else better out there who's the right fit for me. And this deeply humbled me because before that was of the belief of if I just do enough shadow work, he'll appear. And what it opened me up to is that love is everywhere. There are opportunities to love at any given moment. If you're single right now listening to this and you're like, where do I find someone? It's like, there's someone in your life right now that you probably already know that you could have the most epic love with, but you have blinders on that you cannot see them. Because maybe their looks, because maybe their job, because maybe the way that they chew or this or that, and all these things that we have. And it showed me that like a lot of mine were my own inner child that I was rejecting. It took me back to my 11-year-old girl that felt fat and ugly and unloved. So then later on, subconsciously, I was like, oh, if I have this man choose me, that means I'm not those things. That means I'm beautiful. That means I'm worthy. And I would place my worth on a certain person that I depicted as, if they choose me, then I'm the fucking shit. You know, this pedestaling that we do. And it showed me that if you want to put someone at a pedestal, you're not going to have a real relationship. You know, this way that we're seeing relationship is Barbie playing with Ken. And guess what? After a few moments of playing, even Ken's like, okay, I'm bored of you. So we'll start there with my hot take. Kevin, what do you think?
That's definitely a hot take. I love it. And it's also very true and very real. So thank you for sharing that. I guess there's so many questions I have, but I guess to start, like, how do you feel that we've gotten there on that seeing relationships as a place to get my needs met, to cast the role, et cetera, as a culture? What do you think has led us in that direction?
I would say social media is the biggest reason why our generation is inherently self-absorbed, you know, and we're not the first one. I would say our parents have narcissistic traits in their own way, but it's more around cutting themselves off from empathy. I feel our generation does have a great deal of empathy. However, because of social media, we're constantly creating this digital personification of ourselves that we almost don't even know who we are outside of this projection that we're casting on social media. Back in the day, you probably saw your reflection in the mirror, like in the 1600s, maybe like once or twice a year. In like the mirror in the town, you're like, oh, that's me, interesting. Or like on a riverbed, or, you know, like Simba, like looking at his reflection in the pond. Now we are not only looking at ourselves multiple times a day, but we're not even looking at the real version of ourselves. We're looking at a filtered version of ourselves. That so many women are unwilling to post what they actually look like without the filters, because they have become disgusted with their real selves. And so because of this, we don't even know who we actually are. We are so cut off from our truth, from our reality. And so this separation that we have created from our authentic, true, three-dimensional human selves and this digital self is now I'm creating a world. And in my world, I want this man and I want this relationship and I want to be in the Maldives with him on a honeymoon, just like this couple is. And I want to be singing our baby cute songs like this couple is and this. And we're picking and choosing the best of not even normal lives, highlight reels, right? It's like going to a million trailers of movies and just choosing the best little milliseconds of each trailer. A trailer is already filtered. You know, I want this, that, and that, and that. And no one relationship has all of that. And then the moment that, you know, I see, you know, I was single for a year and 8 months and learned so much, you know, and talking to a lot of single people and this, and most single people that I know, like they stay single for a very, very long time until they're willing to drop these standards. And, you know, on one end of the pendulum, it's don't settle. And I agree. Don't settle on the things that matter to you. Don't settle on someone's effort. Don't settle on how someone makes you feel. Don't settle on safety. But like, does he need to look this way? Does he need to be making X amount of money? Does he need, like, are these actual needs or are these egoic needs? Are these needs coming from trauma? Are these needs actually just preferences and not genuine needs? And it was just so fascinating to watch as I shifted these beliefs within myself. One, I met someone amazing weeks later, you know, and I'm in a real relationship now. And on top of that, like I can catch myself going into those, oh, like, wouldn't it be so nice if we could travel all the time? Wouldn't it be so nice this? And I keep reminding myself that ultimately we are in relationship with the relationship, right? We make it so much about the person. He's this, that, and that. And at the end of the day, you're in relationship, with their effort, with their consistency. Whereas before that, oh my God, I loved me an unavailable guy. You know, oh my God, he's a singer, he's a this, he's a that, but he never contacts me. I'm just gonna get him through my Instagram stories to want to reply, you know, like this hunt that a lot of us women do. Yeah, exactly. That we're like, And trust me, I know the games. Like, okay, I'm gonna like put him on my close friends list and this and that. And it's like, great. Maybe you got him to heart your story. Maybe you got a fire emoticon out of it. Maybe even a reply. Like, is this the relationship you want to be in? These are the things that we must not settle on. Not like, does he have abs? Is he this tall? Like these things, they fade away when you're in a relationship. You know, we make it so, like the ick lists that women have. And trust me, I had one too. It's like, I don't know. I don't like the shape of his nose. Like, I don't like the way that he walks, like all these things. And it's honestly our avoidance to try to perceivingly protect ourselves from heartbreak, that we have this huge criteria of what we're looking for because it's actually our way to opt out of love. And a lot of these women too, then they are constantly clinging on to the fantasy of their ex because he was the one person that they let in. And then they're wondering why they can't get over the ex. Well, because the list of what they're looking for is insane on things that don't actually matter. So then the only person you had this experience of love with is the ex, and you're missing the experience of love. It's not even about that person, but the container that you got to experience love in was through the ex. So then it becomes this obsession with the ex, which I would say most people in the dating space still have.
Most definitely. And it's like, I like to equate it like, where did I put my keys? And where was the last place that I found my keys? And then you do the same thing with relationships. It's like, oh, I need to feel this love. Where was the last place I felt that love? And then you get attached and can't let go of the relationship, as you put it. It's not even about the other person. So
absolutely.
You mentioned lowering standards, which is definitely another hot take. Having crazy standards in the list and the things, you know, could you speak a little bit more to that? Because I think that is a mind fuck for a lot of people, because they're like, well, I'm supposed to have all these high standards because I'm not going to settle in my love life. But not seeing that as a wall around you instead of, I don't know, like you said, a list of preferences.
Totally. So first, it's the question of what are our standards? You know, are they standards in what actually matter in a relationship, or are they standards on what we think we will be if we're in a relationship with that person, right? Like a lot of people's standards are, I need him to, again, look a certain way, have a certain amount of money, etc., because then we believe if someone like this chooses me, then I matter, right? But instead, our standards should be around how willing are they to communicate through hard things. I think that's the number one standard, you know? How available are they to being in a relationship? How chosen do I feel by them? How respected do I feel by them? Are they willing to take feedback? Do I feel safe in their presence? These are amazing standards to have. Have those standards, you know? But then the standards of these things that don't actually matter are, again, our self-protection mechanism. And then on top of that, relationships are created, not found. You know, I think a lot of us were looking to find the perfect relationship. And there is a level of finding, or rather harmonizing with a person that you have the ingredients for a relationship with. But ingredients take cooking, and they take, hey, this is how I've always made a steak. How do you make a steak? Oh, well, I do it this totally different way. Like I'll share with you with my current partner, I'm someone that I love to communicate, right? Like I want you to call me when you wake up. I want to hear from you throughout the day. Like that to me feels like how I'm connected with someone. And I was noticing that he wasn't, like when he was working, he wasn't texting me. And I went into this whole thing. I was crying. I was like, I can't believe this is already done. Like he's not going to meet my communication needs. And I have to let this go because communication really matters to me in a relationship. And I like fully had to mourn. Like I was like ready for this. Like I have to choose myself right now. And I know what I need in a relationship. And I was so sad. I was like, I can't believe heartbreak has already visited me again. And then I shared that with him. He was like, oh, I had no idea you wanted that. I thought you were working and that would be annoying if I was texting you. I'm like, no, I actually would really love that. He was like, okay, I can do that. And now he's just doing it. You know, so it's like, yes, I have this need for communication, but that doesn't mean that because he's not automatically communicating the way that I want, that it can't shift and grow. And so my need really, and what I could have written on my list more is like, can I bring to him, you know, ways that I feel, and is he willing to to take action on that. But also same with me. I feel like, again, as women, we're like only the men, like, say, like one night, I don't know, I was out somewhere, I didn't call him after, and he told me he was upset about that. And that to me was a great reminder of like, I can also call him, whereas a lot of this like female dating advice, oh God, we can have a lot of hot takes on that, but like this, like, seduce him, be a dark femme manipulative seductress, and do the triangle gaze and like all these things. And, there is an element of truth in that. There are like psychological tactics, but again, like you're not going to have a relationship through these tactics, right? But like what they tell you is like never text a man first. And so I was still really in that of like, if he wanted to talk to me, he would message me. So I must never call him or never text him because I got to keep the mystery, because I got to keep him chasing me. And it actually made him sad of like, why don't you call me?
Yeah.
So it's like at the end of the day, do we want a heart-centered relationship, or do we want this chase and pull game thing, which, by the way, the moment you drop the game and open your heart, whoever played cat and mouse with you is going to find someone else to play cat and mouse with.
That's very true. I mean, I'll even speak just from the male perspective. Like, it's attractive sometimes for a woman to initiate stuff. Like I don't want to have to be the one to always initiate. And I consider myself a very masculine man. Like, it's nice. It shows mutual effort. And so again, like what you're saying, a lot of the advice that's out there on Instagram is like, okay, is this actual relationship advice, or is this manipulation advice, or is this going to just continuously keep the cat and mouse game going on? Because at the end of the day, if you're doing that type of stuff, you're still playing games in a lot of ways versus just being honest and real, like you were saying.
Exactly. And that kind of content is made for the general public. The general public is extremely emotionally unavailable. They have not done healing work. They definitely don't listen to the Heart Guy podcast. They're not in these conversations. So we go and we take advice from these people, and it's like, yeah, you ignoring a guy, like there was this like video or that went viral. It's like the ultimate way to get his attention. And it's like, text him his name and like, I have something to ask you, and then don't respond for 24 hours. It's going to drive him nuts. It's like, yeah, because he probably thinks you're like hurt, But it's like, we're trying, it's like the inner little girl in us that wanted dad's attention. Like, that's really where all of this is coming from. That like, if I pretend I'm hurt and injured, will you care? Like, if I disappear, if I threaten that I'm going to run away, will you care? And again, like we all know the mom, dad wound stuff, but it does really come up again and again because our relationship is not going to resolve the ungiven needs from our fathers. It's really not. And, I noticed in myself, like my dad was someone who was really respected, but worked a lot, didn't have a lot of time for me. And so I saw men who were doing great in their careers, but didn't have time for me. I saw that as like, oh, that's the kind of guy I want to be with. That means he's a respectable guy because of the imprinting of my father. And now I've consciously chosen that I much rather prioritize time and like the intimacy that creates over how successful someone is financially in their career. Because ultimately what my love language is quality time. And I had to really unwire that. So I feel that a lot of us, and a lot of this advice too is, created like this Shara 7. I don't know if you've heard of her, the sprinkle. Oh God, you got to look into it.
Okay.
So basically, she's like probably like the biggest like relationship tip person out there right now. And her whole thing is like basically teaching you how to be a sugar baby. Like, but an unofficial one. And so essentially the reason why she's gotten so big on TikTok and now on YouTube, et cetera, is because a lot of women have felt heartbroken. They have felt that I followed my heart. I fell in love with this man and he hurt me. So I can't trust my heart because it gets me in trouble. So what can I even get from men? I can't get them to tell me the truth. I can't get them to consistently show up for me. I can't get them to be my genuine partner. I can get their money though. And so a lot of these women have resigned their need for love, which is a genuine human need for our evolutionary survival, to, well, I'm definitely never going to get that. So I might as well just play these games and get money. And it's really sad because, on the micro, it's a lot of women dating men that they're not interested in, men that they're not attracted to, men whom are a lot older than them. But on the worst end of the spectrum, like multiple women have been killed from going on these dates with these men who are completely using them and extremely dangerous. And it's sad because we see this archetype, played out time and time again of like, rich man, young woman. And it's interesting how our generation is like almost trying to bring that back as like this. We don't even know how to do relationships. So, like, maybe it's the old model that works.
Mm.
Relationships aren't a place for love. And I do feel there is the need for a greater discussion of relationship and where are the commonalities, because yeah, they're not always the same, but I do believe the highest form of relationship is based on love. But I feel a lot of us feel, well, I'm never going to be able to be in a relationship with the person that I love, so I'll be in a relationship with someone who can meet whatever, needs that I have, which for a lot of women are financial.
Is that because of the high standards, you think, of the idea of the perfect man?
I think on a bigger, it's because a lot of people don't love what they're doing. People don't like their jobs. And so they're like, if my way out of working this job is to just get married to this guy who maybe a few times a year I have to have sex with him and get drunk and close my eyes, which is genuinely the advice that this woman is giving people, just drink a lot before. They're like, if that's the thing that's going to get me out of working this job, then I'll do it, which is the bigger question of why aren't we instead teaching women to live their purposes and live lives that they're in alignment with what they do? I'm the first woman in my family to work. My family comes from Iran. Like, my grandmother was in a forced child marriage with my grandfather. This is like directly in my lineage. And I saw my mom. She didn't have her own money. She had allowance from my dad. And, at the same time, she had her needs met and she had a beautiful home and she could focus on raising her children, but she didn't have genuine freedom. And so for me, I always wanted to have access to my own resources so I would never have to sacrifice the one thing that matters most in life, love, for financial security. So I feel if more women stepped into their purposes and genuinely loved what they did, they could then make decisions from a more empowered place rather than resigning their need to feel loved and met for a financial transaction.
That's very true. And I think on the purpose bit, because I think, well, there's a few questions that I have around this, but first off, how important is purpose when it comes to relationships? Because I can look back on previous generations that maybe just got the job done and weren't lit up on purpose but found love, and then the era that we're in now, needing to find your purpose and live in your dharma, which is beautiful, and I think everybody should definitely find that. But how does that interplay with relationships here? Could you speak a little bit more to that?
I believe that there are karmic relationships and dharmic relationships. So the word dharma means our soul's purpose, the big reason why we are here, our unique place in the universe, our jigsaw puzzle and fabric of humanity. So it's not just what you do, it's not just your career, but it's how you do it, why you do it. It's your magic sauce, it's your frequency, it's the way that you individually podcast or have a conversation with someone or decorate your home or have that dinner party or throw that sweet 16, whatever the thing that it is that you do. It's your unique way of doing it that is your dharma. It's what you bring to everything. And I feel so many of us, we've never really asked ourselves what that is. We've never really sat with this question of who am I? So then we assign our identity to our relationships. So many of us are actually just going and dating people. Our type is who we want to be, right? So like for myself, when I first became single again, I was always attracted to like Afrobeat singers specifically. It's like, wonder why. And I was like, I just want our relationship to be us in the studio and them teaching me how they produce their track. Like that is what I wanted the relationship to be. And what it later showed me was because I wanted to produce Afrobeats music, which I went on to do and create an album of. And then guess what? I stopped being attracted to that archetype because I no longer needed it. And especially as women, I feel that we outsource our purpose to the guys that we're dating. So my question to the person listening right now is like, what is your type? Is your type super ambitious entrepreneurs? Is your type like romantic poets? Is your type farmers who tend to the land? And now, how do you actually desire to be more of that? So I find we're often casting our net in the direction that our soul knows, the reason why you're attracted to super ambitious or very intellectual men is like part of you desires to be more ambitious, more intellectual, more with the earth, more. And then we think our ticket to that is men. Men are not a ticket to a lifestyle. They actually, relationships are meant to be a perfect complement to the lifestyle that we're already in. If I wanted to find this mountain man who, does meditation for 6 hours a day, is it better for me to go find that, or is it better for me to actually go off into the mountain and meditate for 6 hours a day? And I will probably more likely align with someone like that when I start living it. And also, my attraction might change. It might have been that I just felt like genuinely doing that myself. So there's that. The next piece about the Dharmic and Karmic relationships. So I find that when we, our first few significant relationships are karmic relationships. So karma is the bounded action by the universe to keep you in alignment with your dharma. So your dharma is your soul's purpose. It's your North Star. It's who you are. Karma is the natural repercussion that happens when you're not living in alignment with your dharma. It's the feedback needed, the lessons learned. So imagine if we are born on a highway, and that highway is taking us towards our dharma, our soul's purpose, which we were naturally born as. Like as children, we naturally loved to do the things that made us come alive. We naturally shared our gifts. Like we didn't have to try. But as we went on in life, we started to get off these exits of the highway. Like this exit, hey, well, you'll make more money doing this, or you should date people like that, or everyone in your town does this, or your parents will be more proud of you if you date or do someone or do something or someone that does that. And all these different exits that we take that get us off of the highway of our dharma. So when we get off of these exits, the universe responds. It says, no, that's not the right direction. Tap, tap, tap. You're feeling anxious. Something's feeling off. You're having second thoughts, but most of us, we don't listen. We think, oh, that's just life, So then we get further off of that exit. And then life starts to get a little bit louder, punch, punch, punch. Now things are actually really going off. Maybe you're even having like panic attacks, like something's really feeling just out of alignment. Again, most of us just think life's tough, get a helmet, drink more coffee, take more Xanax, whatever the thing is, just keep going. Until you keep getting off that exit so much that the universe is like, okay, bitch, you are not listening. Accident, catastrophe, something huge, an on your knees moment that it needed to get to for you to finally listen. And by the way, some people still, those moments happen and they still don't learn. They still try to put the blinders on because it's too hard for them to change. And you guess what? The karma keeps getting worse and worse and worse and worse until you listen. But when we do take that feedback, which you needed to have the level of breakdown that you needed to make that U-turn, then you start to shift. You start to remember who you are, what makes you come alive. What's who you are even outside of relationship. That is so imperative. We lose ourselves in relationship. We morph ourselves in relationship. When we become in relationship, we highlight the things that we believe will bring us security in the relationship and then demolish the things that we feel we will be, like thrown out of the relationship for, right? If my partner doesn't like when I do this, then I'm for sure not going to do that. My partner likes when I do this. So we're morphing our identity as that, So we start to relearn, we start to understand. For a lot of people, it's through breakups, it's through divorces. That's definitely what it was for myself. And then we start to come back in alignment with our dharma. And now, because we are living the path that we're meant to live, we're on cruise control. It's like you're meeting the right person at the right time that said the right thing. Maybe you just randomly put on this podcast. You don't even know how it came up. Maybe you've never even listened to it before. You're like, heart guy, this sounds interesting. And here you are. And you're like, I don't even know why I'm here, but this is exactly what I needed to hear right now. Congratulations. You are in Kriya, which is boundless action by the universe, a state of flow, which is how life is meant to be lived. You are meant to seek synchronicities all the time. You are meant to feel that momentum that happens when you're living in alignment with your dharma. And that can be through being in the right relationship. That can be through shifting your career. That can be through starting a new project. That can be through making a move. whatever it is that's bringing you closest to your highest self, your fullest expression, the truest version of you, you will notice that instead of like the series of unfortunate events that it felt like in karma, you're experiencing now the boundless flow. So that brings us to what's a karmic versus dharmic relationship. Karmic relationships are those relationships that we came to from a place of karma, and again, they needed to happen. They needed to happen for us to learn certain lessons that our soul signed up for. In my own relationship, I was with my ex-husband. We were together for 7 years until I found out that he had been cheating on me. And it was a huge dark night of the soul. But if it wasn't for that, I would have never done the deep healing work that made me even start to question truly, like, who am I? What are my shadows? How was I in that relationship? My childhood, my ancestral lineage, all of these things. And come to this bigger question of what are relationships for? What is marriage for? What is love for? Which took me on a completely different trajectory of my life. And now looking back on it, I can see the layers of karma that we kind of had separate lives and, we weren't really prioritizing the relationship and we weren't really checking in. And, it was like a phase that we were both kind of working a lot that I thought would be a phase that like naturally we would just come back together without a clear intention for it. And it was just drifting, drifting, drifting further apart until I found out this news. And it was like, okay, girl, you want to be living your Dharma. This is the one piece of life that you're still not living your Dharma fully in. And that relationship needed to go. And after that, like we do often have to do the deep excavation work. It can get darker before it gets lighter. It's not like I found that out and then I was like, everything in my life is great. It was dark. It was heavy. The first 6 months were extremely challenging. I would wake up and cry every single morning. I never knew if the tears would ever stop. But I find that this was a beautiful opportunity for me to feel all of the sadness I never felt my entire life. All of the times that I was a child that I held back my tears. All of the times that even I was angry at my dad, but I held it within myself, that sometimes we manifest situations like this so we can feel all of the emotions that we were holding on to under the surface. It's like that situation was the perfect little crack in the teapot to let some of that steam that we have been holding on to, maybe for lifetimes. And then through clearing and purifying and releasing and letting go, which started with the relationship, but became full, deep excavation work of self, I became an entirely different person on the other side. And now, almost 2 years after that, I have so much gratitude for him, for the whole experience, because I know that my soul chose to do this dance, to go into the illusion that marriage is eternal safety and that, you say till death do you part and then that's it. And you don't have to work on it because you're married now. I had to go into all of these things firsthand for me to realize that relationship is a continual choice. And a choice requires continual effort. It requires continuing to getting to know the new version of yourselves. And, and it's a big question. I'm curious your take on it too, of like lifelong relationships. That's something I'm still like sitting with of course, my deepest desire is to be in a lifelong relationship with someone that we're both choosing each other every single day. And I also know from not only my own experience, but seeing so many people, as sometimes our genuine choice at a certain point in the relationship would not be to be in that container. So I'm curious what you think of lifelong relationships and your take on it.
I absolutely love this question. Well, I grew up like most of us who had that image of lifelong relationships as the goal. I mean, my first girlfriend became my fiance because it was like, yep, okay, this is it, and like forever. And so that concept for me was so ingrained. And as I've matured and also gotten closer to myself and just really knowing what I want, like you still desire that lifelong path. And I'm in service of God and love more than my idea of a relationship, which to me sometimes just means truth. So some partners get to come into your life for a reason and for a season, as you've been describing karmically, or either otherwise. They're there to, so that y'all can have some certain experience to shift more into yourselves. And if the truth is ever different at any point in time, then it's like, I'll say it this way. I've interviewed a lot of couples on my podcast who've gone through some shit where walking away was like, yeah, that anybody else would do that. And they chose to stay together and actually repair something. And so it really is, it comes down to a choice. Like, I don't think any relationship is going to get out of something big happening in the relationship. We talk so much about like repair and how important repair is. Well, there's going to be a big rupture for some big repair opportunities. And it, at that point, is a choice, because like you had shared before, love is a choice and relationship is a choice. And so I think about it now as, what is my highest truth and their highest truth? And if we're walking in the same direction, and if those truths align, and a capital T truth, might I say, then we keep walking together. And I think part of what's dismantling for me my understanding of forever and not putting that label on something is, at least for me, it's been my experience that when I let go of the concept of forever, even if I'm committed and in a relationship and want it to be a forever thing, losing that thought and approaching it as, this is gonna end. You're gonna pass away, I'm gonna pass away, or we're gonna break up. It's gonna end. And approaching it like that, you're way more present, you're way more loving, you're way more truthful and open and honest, and the relationship just works different, and in my opinion, better, because you're not trying to make it into something you think it needs to be. You're able to sit with what is and dance with that. Because then you can actually meet somebody for the truth, instead of, again, having that North Star of this idea or a high standard, as we talked about earlier, of, I need you to show up this way, which again, there's a level to that, but not for the sake of sabotaging the relationship that you're in a relationship with.
Absolutely. Yes. Every relationship ends with either death or divorce, right? It's always going to. It's interesting because in this new relationship that I'm in, I found myself like going into that, like, oh my God, is this the one? Like that excitement thing that happens. And then again, like really having to mourn that illusion of forever, because it is an illusion. You might both genuinely want to be together forever, just like everyone who gets married genuinely wants. And that doesn't guarantee it. Nothing guarantees it. It's often the couples that were like, let's just see how it goes, that like end up like, oh wow, here we are 20 years later. Could have never predicted. I find though, it's difficult to love as if it's not for forever. So where I'm at, and I'm curious what you think, is like, love like it's like forever without holding on to this need for it to be forever.
Yeah. In my awareness, it's again valuing love and truth and service to growth, and that more than even the dynamic. It's like, I'm going to love you so deeply that if at any point you change so much, or our courses change and you don't want to be in this, that's what's going to happen. You have to really get out of any of the,
Exactly.
well, I'm going to fight for you and clinging stuff.
And it's so, I'm sure you've seen on so many different podcasts with the couples that you've done, the nuance of when to know if it's time to let go or hold on. And, I wish I had an eternal answer for that. I would say in my marriage, the reason why I knew it was not meant to be was because there was a rupture of trust. And I feel like when that baseline, like the fundamental trust is not there, you don't have a foundation to grow on. And again, his infidelity was an ongoing one for many years. I would say though, if it was like we grew apart and then maybe it happened one time at the end, then there could have been, a way for us to mend, and it could have been like a symptom of something, but his was like a long habit that he's had in every relationship that I just did not even know about, right? So it's just this like, and for both of us, honestly, when it came out, neither of us really wanted to continue to make it work. And it was almost, it needed to become something like this for both of us to be like, 7-year cycle, you know? So I feel like sometimes things like that happen. But if it wasn't for that, because of my programming, especially growing up Persian, I would have never divorced. Like he could have lived on Mars and I would have been like, yep, we're married for the rest of our lives, you know? So I needed it to be, you know, the triple A, abuse, adultery, or addiction, one of those for me to walk away. I would say, you know, I understand though a lot of people tell me, well, I have children and I don't know what to do with the children. And again, there's so much nuance to this, but one thing that I really saw with the medicine is that like there's such an intelligence to the way that souls are created. There's such an
Yeah.
intelligence to them choosing their mother and their father because it's not just them, it's lineages creating a new hybrid of humans, creating a new ancestry. And that is never a mistake. You know, it's coming from somewhere so much deeper. And, you know, a friend of mine, her baby was 1.5 years old and she could really feel that the relationship was done. But she had a 1.5 year old baby. Like this is for her like the worst time. I'm going to be a single mom, and really sitting with the shame of that, and you know, doing a lot of deep healing work on that label. And a year later, she met her now partner that they've been together for 6 years and have such a deeper love, which again is not perfect. But had she let that shame story of being a single mom cause her to stay in a marriage where she already knew was done, I don't even know where she would be today. So I feel like a lot of us, and again, from our parents, it's this, well, you stay together for the kids. And again, I believe our parents knew what was best for them. But I would wonder what more relationships would look like where it's like we were genuine examples of true love.
Right. And that matters more than just staying together for the kids, honestly. Because it's like you said,
Mm-hmm.
souls choose their parents. And so,
Yes.
you know, there's a lot there. Trusting the unfolding
So
of it
what
all.
is your take? Because you
Go
interview a
ahead.
lot of people.
Yeah.
What is your take on a lot of people come to me of like, I want to put in the work to make my relationship have more intimacy, more depth, but my husband does not. Do you feel that there is room for repair if one person is unwilling to put in that time and work?
I'll say yes because I've seen it change.
Mhm.
I've seen couples completely shift their dynamic when one person starts showing up different, because quantum physically you're entangled, so it's going to affect that in some degree. I've also seen putting in the work and then it doesn't work out, right? So it really is an alignment to truth in a lot of ways. But yeah, it could definitely. Ultimately, it's like it's not going to guarantee that you're going to make the relationship work, but you're going to be a better partner. And when you're a better partner, it's like, okay, if that person's either going to rise into that with you because you're not emasculating them, or they're feeling their needs are getting met more and they're going to want to meet your needs again, like whatever that dance is, something shifts and it then becomes a safe space for them to open up and talk, and you let go of resentments and they're like, whoa, you're different, and they get to build a new relationship, right? And so a lot of times it is ending the relationship that was and beginning to build a new relationship. And a lot of that is like clearing resentments and actually killing the old relationship in a way to create something new. And that can definitely be done. But again, there's instances where it doesn't. And
100%.
that also is going to fall into alignment, and that somebody will show up to match that.
Absolutely. I feel that there's so much that we can change exactly by showing up in a different way and approaching it from a place of open-heartedness. I find that a lot of us in our communication, especially in the spiritual community, can really intellectualize things. I need this, so you must that. And it feels very prescriptive. And that other person might kind of fulfill the need out of obligation rather than inspiration. And what we genuinely want is that person to also want to make that relationship work. So that's what I love about like tantric practices, that through the embodiment, through you know, using the body to show your yearning, to show how it makes you feel, to emote it rather than just talk about it. I feel like especially with men, it's already so intellectual. They're at work where they're, you know, in meetings and stuff all day, and then if someone comes and it's like, my need for a relationship is X things, and You know, I had a friend, she was like, you and your new boyfriend, you should sign this divine union agreement before you get into a relationship. I was like, oh, what's that? She sends me a 14-page document. And I mean, it was great questions, truly. It was great questions. But like, imagine I'm like, before we get into this, I need you to sign this 14-page document. Do you agree that we will see each other X number of times a week? Will you be using my love languages? Will you this? Will you that? And then there was like an incantation at the end. And I was like, again, the thought of it is like, of course, we need to have these conversations, but the way that it's presented feels like I would be scared. Like, imagine if I was like, Kevin, I really like you. Like, I think we should be friends. But before we get into this friendship, here's the document of how I need you to show up for
Like,
this friendship. You know,
no
here's the
thanks.
ritual we got to do after. Exactly. So it's like, how can we with humor? How can we with joy? How can we with sexuality? How can we with play, like show our needs, inspire? And then, like, even the word for needs, I just really want to question it, you know, because needs are changing just as much as a relationship is. And what we're holding on to so dearly as a need, again, often is a personal and moving preference that likely you shift some other things in the relationship that need it. Like, why, like, even me saying, I want to hear from you during the workday. Why? It's like, that's like my inner little girl. You know, I want to hear from you so I remember that you still love me. You know, it's like, is that a genuine need? No, it's not. You know, it's like, there are people whose partners are in war and they don't hear from them for like months. They have to like get a letter from them once, you know, every season, like the Notebook, and like they stayed in love. It's like, you know, but now we have this need for constant communication because of social media. That, again, is it a need, or am I just now used to this? So yeah, like, and at the end of the day too, I feel we're putting so many of our needs on this one person, whereas before we had these needs met from a village. You know, like I had my person that I would dance with, and my person I would have long talks with, and my person I would weave baskets with, and my person I would this and person that. And now that whole village is in one person that we're supposed to equally parts feel like safe with and turned on by, which are like, you know, kind of like competing energies oftentimes, which Esther Perel often talks about. So I feel like at the end of the day, do we want to be right, or do we want to be in love? Do we want to be in the perfect relationship, or do we want to be in a real relationship? And that's just a question for us to ask ourselves.
That's the question right there, for sure. Well, this has been amazing. We do have to wrap up,
Yeah.
and I hate that because we're fucking on fire. You're on fire. Where can people find out more about you and the work you do, and change their Instagram feed so they're not seeing this sugar mama shit or sugar baby shit?
Yeah, exactly. I'll send you a link or not.
Yeah, where can people, can you share all that will be down below. What all do you have coming up? How can people get connected to your world and more involved with the work you're doing?
Yes. Well, thank you so much for having me. I have a heartbreak healing course called the Ultimate Heartbreak Healing Course, which is like a step-by-step 33-day journey of what really supported me. So that link is iamsahararose.com/heartbreak. And let's make a code for your listeners for 25% off. So we'll make the code
Yeah.
Kevin. And your
Awesome.
listeners can get 25% off the course. Yes, and I have a podcast as well where I speak a lot about matters of the heart. We'll have to have you on. It's called Highest Self Podcast, and my Instagram is I am Sahara Rose.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Yay, thank you for having me.